Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
Dripping in gold? That's cool. Dripping in Velveeta's supremely creamy golden cheesiness? That's respect. Elevate your drip with Velveeta's range of outrageously delicious dips and dishes. Shells, cheese, melty blocks, and heat and eat queso that go all in on indulgence. Flex on your fam with a creamy, cheesy masterpiece and go all in on what you love with Velveeta. Respect the drip and satisfy your cravings. Bring home the drip with Velveeta.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Join us on this week's United Rugby Rewind, where we discuss all the games of the week from last week. Plus, we go into a little bit of depth about the Dragons and Leinster. We discuss the TMO and exactly what that means to the rest of us. We discuss Zebre and Munster because we couldn't get past it. And if you stay till the end, you will hear our predictions for the games ahead. It is going to be an awesome week. Stick with us. Let's do this. You're listening to United Rugby Rewind. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the United Rugby Rewind with me, Lee G, and the ABC of Rugby, Alan, Ben and Caelan. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi, guys.
Good evening, Lee.
Good evening.
The ABC thing is catching on. We've had social media comments on ABC Lee G. I thought that, yeah, cracking. There we go. See, we're going to be in headlines everywhere and any time now.
Merch. Get the merch up and running.
Well, if anyone is interested, we do have a merch shop. It's got some very, very basic things in at the minute just to kind of get us going. And when I've got 5 minutes to scratch my arse later in the season, I will do some fancy stuff. But yeah, I will put it on socials. There you go. It's a good excuse, isn't it? Right, let's crack on nice and quick this week. So we do actually have a little bit of a news desk this week. So Caelan reports about Johnny Sexton coming back home to serve tea for the ladies' second team, yeah?
What a way to sell a book that's coming out in November. But getting back into the news in a big way. He mentioned the aftermath of the World Cup quarterfinal where he spoke to Rico Ioane in very colourful language. But I think the big takeaway is the report from Rugby Pass this week that Johnny Sexton could be rejoining the Ireland camp as a skills and kicking coach. Look, Johnny Sexton is one of Ireland's greatest ever players, probably their greatest ever player. Personally, though, it leaves me a little uneasy because I think the best thing a coach can do is get away from where they're from, get away from their usual setup. This was a camp that he dominated for at least half a decade, if not a full decade, where he was the main voice. He was the captain for 4 years. I think stepping away and not going straight into Ireland would be better. Like, he hasn't coached any schools teams or AIL teams to the best of anyone's knowledge. And he'd be going in there with, say, Jack Crowley, Kieran Foley, Ross Byrne, who he'd played alongside all three of them, for example. And I think it is a little bit different to say, you know, a scrum coach where it doesn't matter what you think of someone's skill set, you're there to teach a technique. Skills coach, kicking coach is very different. It's very much your own idea of how to play the game will be embedded in. I would prefer if Johnny Sexton's going to go down the coaching route, and it looks like he might, I'd prefer if he went to France or New Zealand, like Rog, like Paul O'Connell, and just get out of Ireland, because Johnny Sexton is a huge character. And even from a leadership point of view, I think the best thing that Ireland would do is not having a Johnny Sexton in there to take up a lot of the headlines, because I found in his last year there was an awful lot of Johnny chat, as you can imagine, because it was his last year. But he is a news cycle in and of itself. Like, there's a reason why we're talking about it this evening, because he's a big name. He demands a big amount of attention. I'm just not overly comfortable with it. And even at that, is there better skills coaches in Ireland? There could be. We don't know. A lot of people, both inside and outside of Leinster, were uncomfortable with Andrew Goodman getting the job of attack coach, feeling like there was better people for that job as well. And it's not, giving Leinster jobs or anything like that, but it is a sense of, are we getting the best man for the job? Johnny Sexton was an unbelievable player. We don't know of him as a coach. If he went into Leinster, went into an academy, if he went to France, then we'd know. And I think that's the kind of the feeling. I think a lot of, journalists are going to love it because it's Johnny Sexton. And I'll probably be in that position myself in a few years. But I think fans would be very torn on this one. He could do very well, but you're after replacing a giant Johnny Sexton filled hole with Johnny Sexton. And that's where it's kind of murky.
See, I've got a theory about coaches, that every single coach, regardless of who they are and who they've played for and how good they've been, every single coach should start with coaching an under-sevens team at a local rugby for at least a season. Yeah. I mean this genuinely, because when you take somebody who's never touched a ball before and you see the joy in their face when they score their first try, you see them in tears when they miss their first tag and somebody goes and scores and all that. You understand what rugby means to people. Yeah, you have a much, when you get to the professional level, when you exist at that top level, sometimes you forget about that first moment when you first caught a ball and you went round somebody and you thought, oh my God, I'm half decent here. So, and organizational skills needed for under sevens is off the scale. If you've ever tried coaching an under sevens team, it's harder to organize and coach an under sevens than it is a senior team. So yeah, let's put Johnny Sexton with the under sevens first of all, give him a season with the under sevens, then he can come and do other stuff. So one to keep an eye on later in the year, definitely. So other news over the weekend. Okay, so I can see Alan smiling already. He's got it bubbling up inside. And go on then, Al. So how did South Africa get on in the Rugby Championship this weekend, Alan?
Pretty convincing, pretty powerful game plan, pretty powerful performance. Really thrilled for Marnie Lebok to have the performance that he did. A full stadium, Nelspruit, they play really well there. So I was really happy with the win. We don't win many rugby championships. This is only our fifth one. So it's good to, get it down, because I remember after the last World Cup, we had the whole COVID thing and we weren't allowed to play like international teams for like 2 or 3 years after. New Zealand finished second, so that's good for them. Argentina, unfortunately, didn't get any points. It would have been nice to see them come into second place. And we all know the struggles Australia are going through. But obviously, really thrilled with the performance of the guys and the team as a whole. Jevon Etzebeth, 128 tests for the Springboks, the most capped Springbok ever. So really happy for him as well. So we've got a couple more players, I think, that are going to get up to 100 tests in the near future. But we're in a pretty good place at the moment with the youngsters we've got coming through. Fussy was amazing. Really, really good performance from him as well. So Villiers Leroux probably won't be around for much. He'll get up to his 100 tests, and I think Villiers Leroux will move on. So all in all, really happy with the performance.
And something we touched on in the chat: how many South African fans stayed and watched the game on telly instead of going to watch live rugby in the stadium last weekend?
Well, I think it's a big part of South African rugby. If you've got a Springbok performance, I don't know, I get a sense from the other unions, especially the Welsh guys, that when you have a big, and some of the English in the past as well, international games don't tend to get played on the same days as the leagues, and there's a bit of disagreement on how the players are handled, who's available. But in South Africa, the number one focus has always been the Springboks. So they don't necessarily hold games off for the teams and stuff, but it starts early on in the day. They'll probably start around 10, 11 in the morning with their Clippies and Coke and the Braais. and then they'll just start watching. It'll be really good to watch all of the rugby, the URC, to get warmed up for the games. And then it's about a 3-hour drive from Pretoria and Johannesburg to Nelspruit, so not everyone can afford tickets and the drive and all that kind of stuff. So they'll sit at home, watch the URC or whatever rugby's on, actually, and then they'll get ready for the game. And then obviously they had a couple of games just to sober them up a little bit afterwards as well.
We'll come to that later.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with week 2, round 2 of the URC. So round 1 was close. Round 2 was like, oh my God. So the big results, ironically, aren't in our games of the week. So we'll talk about our games of the week, and then we'll talk about some of the other stuff after. We might have to spend a little bit more time than appropriate on Zebre and Munster, but I've already had messages on socials going, please ask Halen about it. So I'm sorry, mate, we're gonna have to talk about it, but let's talk about your game of the week first of all, which was Connacht versus the Sharks. What did you make of that game?
Lee, you're a fucking lifesaver. That's all I can say. At least I could just pull the plug on the internet halfway through this conversation and we'd be good. No, look, by my reckoning, I think there was 5 come from behind victories in the URC this weekend of the 8, and like considerable, like second half come from behind or late in the first half. Connacht Sharks was one of them, and I hate to say it, Sharks fraud watch. Like 20-point lead at halftime, 27-7, cruising, looked like they were going to get a bonus point. Andre Esterhazen looked like the Harlequins version of Andre Esterhazen. And then they don't show up in the second half. Connacht take off Josh Ioane, who was the player of the match contender last week. They move Cahill forward. And yes, it's Cahill, not Cattle, in case you can't pronounce that over in the British Isles. They move him to 10. He was excellent. And Connacht they just got going. I've name checked 4 players, and I'll kind of touch them individually. Cahill Ford, as I said, brilliant when he went into 10, added a bit of life to proceedings, added a bit of power. He had a poor first half. They backed him in the second half in a different position, and he really stood out. Top Pierce O'Connor of Bristol was really, really good as well at 13, added a bit of solidity in that channel in the second half. David O'Connor, former Ulsterman, former Ealing Trailfinders, second row, really good debut alongside Niall Murray. But Shane Jennings, not man the match, scored the crucial intercept try that won Connacht this game. Now, am I mentioning Shane because I went to school with him? Possibly. But that's the whole point of podcasts like these. His first try for Connacht is an intercept that he goes 80 metres. And look, it's a great moment for him. It's a great moment for Bannister Rugby Club, the oldest rugby club in Connacht, celebrating 150 years this year. To have a moment like that early on in the season is always very cool, before even our junior team have kicked the ball yet. So I do want to give him a shout out. He was excellent. I thought Connacht really grew into that second half. Physically, obviously I mentioned Cahill Ford and how he managed that game and how he got the backs going. If I was to possibly be negative on Connacht, Sharks didn't have to work too hard for their 3 tries. Andre Esterhazen, I know he's a bully. He is dominant. But they were all fairly easy. But then the Sharks were the Sharks in the second half. They needed a last-minute kick just to get the losing bonus point. And I think that's kind of the big takeaway that we're gonna have. We'll probably talk about it with other teams. Fortunately, Munster probably going to be one of them, and Edinburgh probably be another. But and the Stormers as well. But the Sharks, like, that's just what you kind of expected to see. I will say I did predict Connacht to win by more on this podcast, and then when I seen the team sheet, I rolled it back to about 10 points. They won by 9. It was close enough. Or they won by I think 6 in the end.
Yeah.
It was 9 before that last minute kick. But that's a big result for Connacht. 7 points through their first 2 games. They've got the Scarlets next week. Maybe not a game of the week contender, but certainly a big one. Scarlets need a result. They need a performance. Connacht need to keep the feel-good factor going before, I think, 2 interpos in their next 3 games after that, or something similar to that. So really, really good game of rugby. The Dexcom was full at its limited 4,000 due to renovations. But big result for them. A signpost victory early on, because they were 20 points down at halftime, and you can't get away from that, no matter how much you want to say about the Sharks. 20-point deficit at halftime to turn around and get a winning bonus point is huge.
Okay, we'll come back to the other games after. Ben, your game of the week was Glasgow Benetton. Did we know you decided to go rogue, didn't you? You wanted to go Edinburgh Bulls just because, you wanted to be crazy.
But I did watch both games, so I can talk about both if you want me to talk about both. But so I'll go for Glasgow Benetton first.
Game anyway.
Well, I'll go for Glasgow Benetton first, I think. So Glasgow were back to their imperious best. I think it was one of those games where they dominated from start to finish. Benetton, they have to sort their discipline out. Their discipline on Friday night was appalling. Scott Scrafton, that hit on Adam Hastings was disgraceful, and I'd be interested to see when he goes up the citing committee how long he's going to be banned for, because it was petty, it was pathetic. He could have really, really hurt Adam Hastings. His shoulder's gone in. I don't know if you've seen it back yet, but it was just before half time. Adam Hastings done that little chip and chase through, and Scott Scrafton's not just got in towards him, but he's turned in with some force, shoulder to head, and it was the most blatant red card I've ever seen. It was an awful one. So I think that's something that you'd be looking at a 6-week ban minimum for something like that. It was a bad one. So something
we discussed last week as well. Sorry, Ben, was the way when he went off the field, he was very animated and very disagreeable with the ref. And I know we mentioned it last week, but the attitude of the player and when he went off and stuff was pretty, disagreeable as well.
Again, not checking Adam Hastings' welfare on the floor. Hastings has gone down. I mean, fortunately, he probably did fail the HIE because he didn't come off at the time, but he was subbed off at half time for Duncan Weir because Duncan Weir came on the second half and took over the kicking duties. So, how long that Hastings is out for now? Does he have to go through the concussion protocols? But as a player, you should be checking on the welfare of your opponent, irrespective of whether there's been any personal animosity running through the game. I hadn't seen any at that point. But after that, Benetton fell apart. Edogwu came on. I think he got a yellow card for something. I think it was a pretty obvious, knockdown. And there was another yellow card. I think at one point they were down to 12 men for about the 65th to 75th minute. But again, Johnny Matthews scored for Glasgow, and a few other players just kind of running through the game. Sione Tupolotto, again, just dominating the midfield. His handoff for Glasgow's first or second try was brilliant, and it's something that he seems to be able to pull off with ease. He just has that knack of creating that flare out of nowhere. But yeah, Glasgow are very dominant. And I think Benetton, off the top of my head, 30 missed tackles. It's an immense amount of missed tackles. That's high. You can forgive 10 to 15, but 30 is just, you might as well just like have a team full of soft shoulders, because Glasgow are walking through them at the end. And 42-10, I think it could have been even higher if Glasgow had been slightly more precise with their attacking moments. But Benetton are playing Leinster this weekend. Two teams that have misfired. I think Leinster misfired against the Dragons, and they certainly misfired against Edinburgh on the Friday before. So it'll be interesting to see those teams, because I don't think either of them are playing to their best capability at the moment. But Glasgow, look very, very good, and we'll be interested to see how they get on in the next couple of weeks.
I'm just angry that Benetton played half decent against us and then decided to implode at half time. Why couldn't they bring half a game? I do it half and half, but not to worry. So let's talk about Bulls Edinburgh then, because that was a lot closer game.
So the only positive I take from this is that I pretty much predicted the score. I said by 7, they won by 6. It was a head scratcher. John Barkley put it very well yesterday in the post-match analysis. He said, obviously, he's sat there in the studio and he's watched, and he said, I don't know what Edinburgh's game management style is at the moment. They don't seem to know what the other person's doing next to them in the line. And I found that in the last 20 minutes yesterday. Edinburgh were pretty dominant for the first 55, 60 minutes. 12-10 down at half-time. Slightly sketchy try at the first for Bulls' first try. Probably on the balance was a try, but the footage wasn't great. I think it's one of those where if he's went, give me any evidence to overturn a no-try decision, it probably wasn't there. And if it was the other way around, it was there. But he went try or no try, and he said he wasn't satisfied to see anything that wasn't separation. It's a bit of an odd one, because I was thinking about this today. When the ball rolls forward out of your hand like that in grounds, if it's not on the try line, it's a knock-on, isn't it? So there's a bit of a discrepancy there between what is considered separation for a try and what is considered a knock-on in open field play. So I found it a bit of an odd one. The second try that we conceded was awful. We were so heavy on the left-hand side. And then the right side was just Darcy Graham and Matt Scott and Ben Vellicott, I think at that point might have come on. I can't remember off the top of my head. No, not Ben Vellicott. There was someone on the inside of Darcy Graham, and we just left 40-yard gap for of all people, Jacko van der Vault to kind of run through, who was kind of a bit of an average journeyman player at Edinburgh, and he's obviously gone off to the Bulls and scored quite a few points against us on Saturday. But to go in at 12-10 down, we scored a good rolling ball try. Ewan Ashman scored off the base of the line-out when the Bulls were down to 14. And then we kind of turned the screw for sort of the first 10, 15 minutes of the second half. And the big moment was the 66, 67th minute, where I think we went through about 15, 16 phases in the Bulls 22. And then Hamish Watson had the ball ripped out of his hand. This is when we were 13-12 up. It's gone wide very quickly. Curtly Lorenzo has gone flying down the line. They've kicked to 50-22. Edinburgh haven't set up for the line out properly. Ross Thompson sat there, but they haven't marked a 5. And then it's just tossed back in, and then they're straight under the posts. At that point, it's obviously a straightforward kick for conversion, 19-13 at that point. And then I don't really know what happened after that. It was a very, very poor 15 minutes to watch because, again, they were back down to 14 at that point. They got 2 yellow cards in the Bulls yesterday for different reasons. And I don't understand what went wrong in order to not be able to try and get back to a position where we could crack on and win. It seemed that we'd get sort of the A and the B done, but then as soon as it was CD to kind of grow some structure and get a bit more territory in the game, it was missing. And there were some silly things that we did.
Could some of it be down to fatigue though? Like with the Ulster game, could it be down to that to a degree? Like the last 20 minutes of the game, though it's quite difficult, and I agree they should probably have done more. But when you're tired and you're really tired, your decision making is a little bit off, isn't it?
There was some ill discipline.
It was that kind of game, though, was it, Ben? It felt
slow,
like Edinburgh managed the first half hour, first 40 minutes, first 20 minutes at altitude is big because that's when for people who can't hear that, you're sucking in the air. But I felt like they managed that really well, and I know they petered off, but I wouldn't put it down to the conditions. I think they managed that side of things really well. What did you think?
It was ill discipline. I think there was a couple of instances where we gave away silly penalties. Ewan Ashman, no arms tackle, he got yellow card for that. Jamie Ritchie got marched back for speaking back to the ref, which again, he's done that for Scotland. It was one of the main reasons Gregor Townsend took the captaincy off him, because his communication with the referees isn't professional enough, which is why he's given it elsewhere. And I don't really understand the mentality behind that. They've got a penalty. It's well within the 10-metre line. It's not kickable range. It's not necessarily a best place to set up an attack from. At that point, I think it was only 19-13 at that point, or maybe 9. Yeah, again, we were within a score at that point. And then Darcy Graham, there's a kick through, really good kick through by Ben Healy. Darcy Graham goes and pushes the guy into touch. A line out to us within the 22 is then, switched over to a Bulls penalty from their 22. It was things like that which really, really bothered me yesterday, and it was really hard to watch that last 15-20 because I think at the 60-minute mark we're the favourites to win that game. Territory was in our favour, possession was in our favour, line breaks were in our favour, penalties conceded were in our favour. Jamie Ritchie was turning over for fun. There was a lot of good jackling going on, but then the last 15-20 minutes it was just really poor decision making, and it does bother me about the rest of the season because again that was probably Ali Price started. I wasn't particularly happy about that, but he did actually redeem himself because I thought his ruck management was quite good yesterday compared to against Leinster. But again, that's a team with a lot of strength. Tupelotu missed out with a hamstring strain, but apart from that, that's it's pretty much the same squad that started against Leinster the Friday before. So it does bother me going on for the rest of the season that if we can't compete for 80 minutes, how many games are we actually going to win? Because as we've seen,
that was definitely their opportunity because the Bulls hadn't played a game the week before. They weren't in the Currie Cup final. So if you were going to knock them off at home, that was definitely Edinburgh's chance, wasn't it? Yeah,
well, it was. And I think that's the biggest source. The one positive from it is that they're 3 points that we had that we did not get last season because we took nothing off Leinster last season. And I don't think we took anything off the Bulls the season before. So, we've got 3 points. From lose, obviously, but 2 losses, but there are some points on the board. But you've seen everyone else winning around us, and there doesn't seem to be a team that's going to struggle this season, as we'll get on to as Zebre, and also with.
I would disagree with that. Having
South African teams are one game behind, Ben, so you've got a bit of the season to go still.
Yeah, but I'm worried because that's a squad full of internationals, and it just seems to be the same stuff as last season. And John Parkley put it far more articulately than I can in the post-match press sort of room after the match, but I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned about the structure. There just doesn't seem to be that understanding, particularly across the back line, about what they should be doing when there's an opportunity to exploit space behind. It just doesn't seem to be there at the moment. There's a lot to learn, I think, in this side still, but I think we're running out of time to make this season's more successful than last season.
When we did the pre-season review, that's one of the things we spoke about with Edinburgh was how much time does the coach have to start turning results from. So
I think he's got till Christmas. I think I think he's.
Well,
I think the ice is getting thinner with him. I just don't know what his plan is. Paul Hill's been a good signing. He's been actually very, very good in the front row. First 2 games I've seen him very, very impressive. Good at carrying, good at crashing.
If he's got till Christmas, mince pies are in the shops already.
If you'll allow me, Edinburgh's fixtures between here and the the Champions Cup or Challenge Cup, whichever one they're in, is Lions, Stormers, Cardiff, Ospreys, Benetton. There's a good chance there for things to go really well. There's a good chance for them to go the other way as well.
Yeah, it's one of those where I think we could have we were in with a chance of winning both those games against Leinster and against Bulls by the 65-minute mark. We need to manage the last 15 minutes better because yesterday was bordering on amateur, I thought. And I don't want to sound too disparaging, but if because of how last season went, there just needs to be a step change, and I haven't seen it yet, and that's what worries me the most.
Okay,
sorry, that was the Sharks' problem when he was coaching the Sharks as well. It was something similar. So yeah,
and I think it's a difference, like I mentioned previously, between him and Franco Smith at Glasgow. There's definitely a difference in quality there with their tactical nous and game management.
Okay, let's move on then to Lions Ulster. So I watched a fair bit of this game, Alan, because I was doing the housework.
I was doing the background.
Which was my compromise with the wife. With how many games do you want to watch today? I was like, right, well, what about if I do the hoovering while I watch Lions and Ulster? Ulster looked out on their feet at halftime. When the ref blew his whistle at halftime, there were 4 Ulster players down on their knees, panting. So what did you make of this game, mate?
That's exciting.
I was pretty happy with it, to be honest with you. It's exactly what I'm so disappointed that, looking at the Lions and looking at the Sharks, considering they both played last weekend and the game was in Johannesburg as well, although granted in the wet, the Lions looked much more polished. They looked a lot quicker on their feet, very fit. I agree with you that the Ulster guys were out on their feet. They picked the 6-2 bench as well, I think, Ulster, to try and go against the forwards and stuff. But the second half, the Lions just went up a gear. But disappointed in the amount of people that were at the stadium. I think I mentioned that to you guys in the stats and in the chat and everything. But I'm really happy with the performance of the Lions, and I'm really, really thrilled that we get to play Edinburgh next week as well. So, thinking about what Ben's just said, I'm really looking forward to it, because it's an opportunity for the Lions to get another win under the belt before we go overseas. So I'm really happy with the performance. The acid test, as we all know, comes when you go overseas. So the South African teams have gone overseas and they've struggled. And that's always the issue with a team like the Lions, because we don't have the same size squad as the Sharks or the Bulls. So we'd have to see how that goes. But I'm pretty optimistic based on that first performance. The majority of the squad will stick together through the internationals, and they've all been playing together for a while now. Scrum looked really good. Penalties. I'm not that familiar with the fly half Vol Hunter, so I'd need to see how we go with him. But I'm pretty happy.
A possibility for a name, by the way. It's Wolf Hunter. It could be Wolf Hunter. I mean, there's going to be so many memes about this guy if he's even 10% of a good URC player.
Yeah, I think he was. I think he would. Overall, I think he was pretty good. Like I said, I'm not that familiar with him being over here in the UK, but he made a few little errors, but he was, on the whole, I think it was a really good performance by the Lions. So obviously, as you can imagine, pretty good Saturday for me up until after the Springbok game. Pretty happy man, yeah?
Well, so when I watched it, I counted at least 4 clear opportunities that the Lions, in week 5 or 6, those little passes land and you're in. So I think the score was flattering to Ulster, if anything.
It's a weird one, I felt, because I think, but definitely the first half, and I said this in the chat with Alan, Lions butchered a lot of chances. There was some, but then at the same time, one of their tries was kind of opportunistic. PJ Bolton makes a break and, creates a 2-on-1 with Stockdale. They finish it off. They kind of did, I think they had both sides of the coin, but then Ulster got on the field. Their try is opportunistic. John Cooney missed a conversion. Ulster missed 3 of their 4 conversions, which was a killer. That kind of was, it didn't keep them out of bonus point range, obviously, but it was a factor in that. I think Ulster will be, I think they'll be disappointed. I think the big thing for me watching it, and I had only one eye on it as well, I had assignments to do, but I think they're going to really regret, well, not regret, they're going to be really angry they didn't have Harry Sheridan, Cormac Izuchukwu, Scott Wilson in that team. I think they really could have done with them. Stuart Lusky was excellent. Nick Timoney was really good. Thought James McCormick was really good off the bench, actually. He's only young, he's only about 22 years of age. But they're going to really miss having Sheridan and Izuchukwu, because when you go down to South Africa, every little bit of beef and power that you have, especially against the Lions at altitude, is massive. And not having someone like Sheridan as your auxiliary power flanker, I think they missed him, especially in that first half. And they needed a bit of control. They needed a bit of directness when they had the ball, a little bit more room from defence. I actually thought a couple of their players played well. Werner Koch, I think, did all right.
I think Werner Koch played really well. I think I do like Ulster. I think they've got a good team, and they brought on some senior players like later on in the game and stuff. But Werner Koch is the kind of player, he gives 100%. He makes silly errors as well at times, but overall, I think for a first game in the URC, I think it was a pretty good performance. And we're always going to rely on Johannesburg, aren't we? You guys are going to come over here to Johannesburg, and it's going to be difficult for all the teams. But in the same regard, we have to travel. And I know the South African teams don't like going to Ireland. The rain, the wind, the rain that comes like that direction. It doesn't go that direction.
Horizontal rain. Yeah.
It goes that direction, and then it goes up the wind, like they can't stand going over there. So it's good. I'm sure the Stormers are thrilled to get one of those games out of the way, like overseas and stuff.
Well, we'll talk about the Stormers in a minute. So I'm going to finish off the games of the week with Scarlets Cardiff, which, if anybody watched the first 20 minutes of that game, you will have thought, "Oh my God, this is how rugby should be played."
First 20 seconds, even, I think, to be honest.
Well, 14 seconds. I mean, it was luck, because it's a chip ahead that kind of comes off somebody's face. It comes off Cam Winnett's face straight into the arms of Max Page. Max Page has got a lot of potential. He's got a lot of issues, but he is quick. So from a halfway, bump, gone, 14 seconds. Thank you very much. This is great. And then we backed it up straight after. 12 minutes down, we're 15-0 up, and you're thinking, this is good. This is just the way we want to do it. The way the Scarlets played last year was we wouldn't start the game until 20 minutes into the first half, and by then most games were out of reach. So that was encouraging. The way Cardiff came back, they scored a couple of absolute belted tries. The sort of stuff that you put on a video and it just goes mental. And that's how good Cardiff were. So, we went in 15-12 at half time. And then I think half the team stayed in the changing room at half time, and only a couple of them came out. Second half was all Cardiff, and fair play. They played well. The turning point in the game was there was a kick over the top of Johan Lloyd's head. Johan Lloyd was playing fullback. The amount of players that Johan Lloyd beat. He's only Diddy, yeah. He's only 2 piss pots high, but he is rock solid. The amount of players he beat, like 6'6" guy coming out, it looks like somebody going at an under nines on a main pitch. Do you know what I mean? Because he looks tiny and he just skips around them, and I didn't see anyone make a first up tackle against Johan. They think they've got him, and then thump, he's out. So the ball gets stuffed over the top of his head. It then bounces, so he's going back to chase it, and then bounces into his arms, goes back over his head, so it's a knock on straight into a Cardiff hand, and then they're in for a try of that. That kind of took the game away from us, and then Scarlets really lost their discipline after that, and Cardiff absolutely nailed it. They didn't give Scarlets anything. It was pressure, and Scarlets couldn't cope with it. It was as simple as that. There were stupid knock-ons, there were poor decisions, and then it just built into, Cardiff were sitting back, and Cardiff didn't have to do anything. Cardiff weren't put under pressure to do anything. Scarlets were putting all the pressure on themselves, and Cardiff just every time they got the ball, just hoofed it down the 22 and went, there you go run from there. So, it was an entertaining game. It really was, especially the first 20 minutes. First 20 minutes was superb. But after that, Cardiff were excellent. We thought that they were goodish against Zebra, but we weren't kind of sure, maybe it's Zebra, maybe, it's Zebra at bottom of the table, whatever, you would expect to beat them. But given what Zebra have done since and the way Cardiff beat them last week, I think Cardiff have really turned that corner now. And we were never quite sure were Cardiff going to turn that corner, but it absolutely looked like they did. So, return match in 2 weeks' time. It's going to be feisty, shall we say? There'll be a few scores to settle between the two, because there always is. But I'm really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it already. But fair play, Cardiff were excellent yesterday evening. That hurts me to say that, boys. It really does hurt me to say that, but they were excellent. Right, okay, let's move on to other games of the week. Let's start on Friday night. Let's start with
Can we not just get it out of the way at this stage? Come on.
I'll quickly run through Leinster Dragons, okay? At half-time, Dragons should have gone in the lead at half-time. They missed a kick. They would have been 9-7 up if they put that kick over, and absolutely deservedly so, because they gave Leinster nothing. They put them under pressure. Leinster made it easy for them. Dragons' problem was that they didn't really have an attack. Their midfield just isn't firing an attack. Great in defence, not an attack. If you'd have said that at the end of last year, in the last season, that your defence is really going to improve in the off season, I think most Dragon supporters would have gone, "Thank you very much. Yeah, that's good." Second half was a different kettle of fish. What I will say on that game is that whoever was TMO, I'm not going to mention names or anything like that, but whoever was TMO in that game needs their position reviewed, because there is no way you can look at some of those videos and go give the decision that was given. I'd even argue that on the first try. The first try, if that's any other team, that knock-on, that potential knock-on, he's definitely got it in his hands, and then it goes to floor. 99% of the time, that's given as a knock-on for most of the teams. And I think that's been pretty much consistent with anyone that's played against Leinster in Ireland over the last couple of seasons. And it was the same again on Friday. So it wouldn't, Leinster won the tie, and I think they would have won it anyway. But when you've got two tries that were definitely iffy and a third try that should have been reviewed and wasn't, it just doesn't send out the right message about the league and the refereeing in the league. Not the refereeing, the TMO. The referee sees what he sees and gives an opinion on what he sees. And I've got no issues with that. The TMO has got like 10 different camera angles, and from those camera angles, they should be able to go, "That's what I've seen. However, look at that bit there. This is what you didn't see. This is the correct decision." That is their job. And they didn't do that on Friday night. So
some of that's on World Rugby as well, because we keep tying ourselves in knots over how a question is raised and how you can go about certain decisions. And like the Max Deegan one, it was on-field try. I said at the time, I don't know how you can give on-field try. My instant reaction is that is one of the tackles of the season. I still think that ball was held up. There's Leinster fans saying it was a high tackle. I think it's one of those that close to the line that you'd want to significantly stop the try from being scored. The person who made the high tackle on Deegan is not the person who held him up. Therefore, I don't think you could give a penalty try. The Larmer one, there's people in the crowd saying, no, he definitely got that down. We could see it. That's fair enough. We can't go off the people in the crowd. We have to go off the
But-
camera angles, and the camera angles were not conclusive. I'll let you jump back in because I do think Leinster really got the rub of the green here, like a sickening amount. It's not like Munster fan hates Leinster or Welsh fan stands up for the Dragons. It's none of that.
No.
I think if you show that game to a New Zealander or something with no jerseys on, they're saying, "Geez, Team X got the wrong side of things."
But it
Because
seems to happen
it's
all
not-
the time with Leinster, though, doesn't it? It seems to be season in, season out. They always seem to get the flip side of the coin with those decisions, and
Big teams do. It's the nature of it, I suppose.
it's the Man United, isn't it?
the bit-
No, it's not
Not,
anymore.
not after today. Bruno Fernandes, naughty boy. Yeah.
The bit that annoys me on that the second try was that the referee said that it was a second movement. He didn't question whether it was down because he said it was a second movement. And then the TMO comes in and says, "Actually, I think he's got the ball down." But when he's reviewing that, you can still see that he's down on the floor. He's got both knees down, and then one of his other players comes in and picks him up and takes him up. That's not momentum. That's somebody else picking you up and dragging you over the line.
It felt
whether you get the
strange
ball-
they didn't properly look at that. It felt like, because I wasn't sure. I actually thought it was okay. I thought it was close enough to one movement when I seen it. But I thought the fact that they used the words, "No, that's two movements," and then never went back over that.
Exactly.
I was like, I did actually feel like I was like, surely you're gonna check that again.
You've got to go
And like,
back and
yeah. If
And
this was a
I'll-
tight game, this is the thing. If this was a tight game, we'd have a very different conversation. Leinster put clear they won by 20 points. This was only 2 tries on a night where Ross Byrne left his kicking boots at home. But like, what if this was, a 15-point game and you're talking about 12 points?
Well, I can give you an example.
Very different conversation.
I can give you an example of the officiating working the other way around, which is Glasgow Benetton on Friday, where Jacob Marga scored, and they came all the way back to a forward pass from the line out, which was about 4 or 5 paces back. And that just shows that that was done properly. It was recycled. The footage was recycled. They looked at it carefully, and even after the kick was taken, but before the restart, because I know there's a change in the rules there now. It doesn't have to be before the conversion. It can be before the restart now that it can continue to set the ties. So it can't be that player just rushes and takes the conversion, knowing that it might be checked. Is that you can still check it up to the restart, and it was done properly, and they recycled it and looked it back. But yeah, I think looking at that, the officiating. Not sure. The one thing, and I don't want to get into being critical of particular referees, but Mike Adamson, I do listen to I'm quite interested in the communication style. This is based on my occupation because I know I've dealt with some very, very difficult people in my life and trying to diffuse them. Most refs are quite good at it. Mike Adamson, I'm not so sure. I sometimes see him. I don't know if it's deliberate, maybe it's his semantics or maybe it's the tone of his voice, but I sometimes see him winding players up a bit and geeing them up. I don't think he's as good at calming down situations where contentious decisions are made as someone like Andrew Brace or Frank Murphy or Wayne Barnes or Ollie Davidson. Those are the. I just don't think Mike Adamson necessarily has the appropriate communication style to ensure, because there was a bit the way he spoke to the players after that try was given didn't really come across to me as a ref really kind of controlling the situation from a communication perspective. I think there's a lot to learn about that, because there are laws, they're interpreted, there's always going to be a bit there, it's not always binary decision, the outcome. There is a lot of discretion there, but sometimes I think he could probably maybe review the way he speaks to people and go, hang on, there's maybe time to be a bit humble here and accept that sometimes the words that I use are not always the most appropriate at the time. And that is his job. Like you're not there to get kind of like be centre of attention. I feel like Mike Adamson often is the centre of attention with rugby games. He seems to like kind of being on the field, but the referee kind of should be seen and not heard.
There is also a lot of communication stating from players and captains. We expect them to engage the referee correctly, don't we? So I suppose we don't really consider the other way around, how they're engaging us, or us. I say us. The players and the captains. We always think, he's not being very. I know Johnny Sexton had it a lot, and Khaleesi had to work on it because he wasn't talking to them at all. And though he was constantly sending Dwayne Vermeulen over or Eben to talk to the ref, and then it's like you've got to improve how you talk to him. You've got to be out there, and because And now I suppose we don't really consider that it's actually the referee who also needs to work on that element of the game, you know?
I don't think Adam's the only one. I think you could probably level similar. I'm not saying it's an accusation, but similar kind of analysis of Matt Carley and Carl Dixon. I think sometimes the way they speak to players can be a little bit out of turn, and you've heard it. And the respect does have to be two ways. I know that the ref is there, and obviously they're there to do what their job is, which is very, very difficult. I'm not going to take that away from them or try and undermine their authority. But the communication is a two-way piece, and sometimes you hear this the way that sometimes referees answer, or they can sometimes be a little bit too dismissive. And I think there's Ben O'Keefe, for example, is very, very good. You see the way he communicates with players at all levels, whether it's Super Rugby or Rugby Championship, or when he comes over the Ultimate Internationals. And that's, you see that maybe on Angus Gardner's the same. I remember a conversation between him and TJ Perenara where Perenara kind of questioned a call, and then Angus Gardner went, "Oh, actually, you're right. I'm sorry." Like he actually apologised for making the wrong decision on the field of play it live. He didn't wait till the end of the game. He actually said it there and there, which I thought was quite impressive, very humble. So I think there's communication improvement all around. You can always improve on your communication, but I think there's certain instances where referees need to maybe just be a bit careful.
I quite like the bit where he said where he sometimes he tries to wind the player up, where I've just got this idea of him like covering his mic and going, "Your shorts are a bit tight there, mate." Oh, yeah, carry on. You can. I just So we're not going to dwell on that one too much. I promise. Right. So I'll quickly run through Ospreys Stormers, and then we'll do the big game of the weekend, and then we'll go on to previews. So Ospreys Stormers, nobody really expected the Stormers to win this one, but the Ospreys absolutely nailed it. Fair play to them. It was particularly the second half. It was a superb performance. They were. I'll be honest. It was on in the background. I was doing other things at the time. It's the Battle of Strictly in my house. I'm numbered several times at the minute. So but the bits that I have seen, I thought Ospreys were superb. They didn't make many mistakes. They didn't give Stormers much. They made it hard for them. They played at the Brewery Field. It was intimidating. Everything fell into their path. It worked really, really well. So fair play to them. I say I can't really comment much because I didn't see much on it, but from what I have seen, Ospreys were, bang on form and did exactly what they needed to do to beat the Stormers. Right, let's. Were there any other games on the weekend?
There was
one. There was one in Parma, I believe.
Just get it all out. I'll mute you. You can say
it's about halfway between Bologna and Milan. I think there was a big game that happened there on Saturday afternoon.
Okay, Caelan. Let's talk about Zebre Munster, mate. All yours.
Game of the week. Look, I can sit here and talk about Munster and say that second half was not acceptable, and talk about certain players not going out of the change room, like you mentioned about the Scarlets, and so on. But this is a URC podcast. We're here to talk about all 16 teams, and I'm not trying to gloss over it, but this week is about Zebre. And there's you have to take your hat off to them. I spoke to Mike of the Fratelli Rugby podcast before the season started, and the one thing he said was bringing in Brunello to Zebre, going from under-20s to a team who was essentially a development team for the FIR. He said this really excites them. And in 2 games, granted, that first half against Cardiff was awful. We referenced this last week. It was awful. The last 120 minutes of rugby or whatever it was, they've been incredible. They've had so much confidence. They still have that spark. I think, like, I'm not tearing up. I just have something in my throat. It's not tears. But I really think this is a signpost result. This reminds me of when Benetton bet Leinster back in 2013, I think it was, or 2012. And this was kind of, my word, Benetton can actually beat teams, because at the time they were along the bottom of the table. I think this is it for Zebre. Last year they bet the Sharks, but they were coming off of 2 really tight games before that. So it was kind of expected they'd run them close. This was out of the blue. This was an unbelievable performance. From a Munster perspective, Munster had a try bonus point secured by halftime. Probably the highlight of the game for Munster is Brian Fitzgerald on debut, plays AIL rugby week in, week out. He's 25, never got a sniff of Munster contention. On debut, scores his first try for Munster. It's unbelievable. Munster leading 28-15. I think it was, or 28-17 at halftime, something like that. They leave with just a point. And you have to mention, like, for Munster, that is not good enough. Like, quite frankly, that is, I think Zebra on the day beat about half the team because they had that kind of performance. Everything went their way. They were playing with such fluidity. They played with such a passion. It was unbelievable. Munster are not, like we said at the start of the year, we all had them in our top four. We thought they were a top 4 team. And I think this is the issue. When you take out your Crowleys, your Burns, your Alex Dankevels, your Peter O'Mahony's, are they as strong? Is their B tier as where it needs to be? I do question that because they've lost the likes of Antoine Frisch. They lost the likes of R.K. Snyman, or the idea of R.K. Snyman, because he was never fit. They've lost the likes of Simon Zebo and Andrew Conway and Keith Earls from that back three. So that's the question mark. But I'll talk about that in another podcast. As I said, this is about Zebra. Trula, brilliant, scored 2 tries. Fusco, brilliant, scored 2 tries. Munster be kicking themselves. There were 2 tries because of poor pillar defence. And I'm still remembered of an old coach of mine who used to scream pillars at us. It's the one thing he wanted to see bedded in was pillars. And it's so frustrating to concede. Fischetti was huge. He scrimmaged so well against Ollie Jaeger, carried really well. But they were just brilliant from minute one. Like, Zebra could have led at halftime if Munster didn't put the foot in the throat the last from minute 30 to 40. That's how good they were. They were really, really good. I'm delighted for Zebra, you know, putting my rugby hat on, and I know I have a Munster jersey on because I slag Dragons about if they beat Leinster and whatever. But to a man, to Zebra, to the fans, to Italian rugby, this is brilliant. This is the result we needed to see. And do you know what? Maybe it's a good thing and it's not Benetton that a big team, because we've seen that for the last couple of years, and Benetton are expected to be top 8 and have got off to a pretty poor start. The fact that Zebra have done it, I think is huge. They've done it in their home backyard. I would love to see them beat the Stormers next week. And that's not, again, it's not a Munster thing. It is for the league. It's to show the competitiveness. It's the same way I'd love to see the Dragons back it up next week. They're playing the Sharks. They could win that. And honestly, if Zebra and the Dragons both win next week, we're starting the show with that. We're not leaving it till 1 hour in. We're starting with that because I really hope to see it. Credit to Zebra. Hats off to Zebra. They deserve this one. They were brilliant. No Munster team should lose without a losing bonus point in Zebra ever. You can't be considering that as being okay. Not with the, I know it's a dirty term, but not with the budgets. Not with the budgets that are at play here. It cannot be the case. But this week as well, Zebra. And I'm chuffed for them. I wish it wasn't against us. We mentioned that before. But if it was anyone else, I would be absolutely insufferable. So that's a kind of a sign of how deflated I am. I'm just normal about this result. Anyone else, I would be telling you every 2 seconds, well, Zebra, such a one. So delighted for them.
Well, I think you just kind of made your bed for the rest of the season now, mate, because I think this one's going to be on banners and all sorts of stuff. I mean,
it's a bottom team beating the title winner of 2 seasons ago, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, you don't see that in rugby. You might see it in a football match, the odd upset here or there, but for Zebra to be
the only time you see it is maybe top 14 when it's the bottom team at home as well. But home games are so different in the top 14. You don't see it in the Premiership. And when was the last time Newcastle bet the team who was top of the league? Or, whoever was bottom, Worcester or whoever it was. We don't even see it in this league. And I think, again, it's a sign that this league has come on. Squidge tweeted it. I know he's a member of the Rap family, the most high-profile member of the Rap family. I think it's fair to say Squidge Rugby. But he tweeted at the weekend, the mid-tier of the URC is going to be even tighter than last year. And
7 to 11,
more. Yeah. And I will say that I did the pre-season preview for Zebra, and if anybody would like to go back and listen to me talk about how good Zebra were pre-season, please do, because there's a little bit of feather in my cap going, actually, I said that they were going to upset a few people this year.
Didn't you predict them top 4?
I wasn't drunk.
No.
Yeah, you also predicted Munster first, so look.
Okay. Let's move on.
You'll get Edinburgh's right the way we're going, but
yes, I will. And I'm going to substitute Stormers and Lions around probably as well. Anyway, So Ben, I know you've got to go in a minute, mate. So let's just do your preview for this weekend's big game. So you've chosen Benetton at home to Leinster. So what are you expecting from that game, mate?
Both teams have to show up. I think there's a lot to be learned from their first two games that not really settled yet. I think Benetton got a pretty decent pace off Glasgow on Friday night. They'll be going home on that flight, licking their wounds, talking about discipline this week because that red card, you cannot behave like that on a rugby pitch. So that, they've got to, this week they'll be getting some serious intensive training this week going into the game against Leinster. So I don't know. Leinster, it's a bit of I think they've both been quite enigmatic so far this season because Benetton's first two games, their game against Scarlets at home, 20-all draw, and then getting a pace off Glasgow. Leinster both have won both games, but not convincingly, and certainly not with the sort of swagger and the kind of style that we're used to of years of past, even last season. So I don't know how this game's going to go, which is why I picked it out, because I'm going to watch it with keen interest and be as fairly neutral on it because I don't really have any kind of ball with either side. So I'm not sure. I think Benetton, I'm going to say it's going to be a 3 or 5 point game between the two teams. I think Benetton, if they could squeeze out a victory at home against Leinster, I think if Leinster play the way they did against Dragons on Friday, Benetton will beat them at home, I think.
Is that your prediction? Are you saying Benetton?
That's brave.
I'm going to say Benetton by 3 because I think Benetton sometimes the worst time to play a team is when they've been had a proper going over, and Friday was a bigger going over it's possible, I think, for the rugby that we've seen this season and probably even last season. I haven't seen a battering like that. Glasgow could have scored 60, 70 points on Friday. It was that kind of game where if they'd really gone into sort of fifth gear, they would have walked over Benetton. They still won by 32, but they could have won by 52 or 62 the way they were playing on Friday. Benetton really just surrendered within the first 10 minutes. They did get one try to get it back to 7-0, but after that was it. They were just blown away. So, there'll be an expectation that at home against Leinster, they'll show up. And I think they'll have to. So I reckon if Leinster don't pull their fingers out like they haven't done so far this season, I think it could be potential upset.
They'll have all their internationals back is the only thing I'll say. They'll have Doris, Porter, Furlong. Everyone bar Sheehan essentially will be allowed back by this game, as far as I'm aware, which may swing it. But the only thing is, Leinster's big issue has been they just haven't looked that cohesive. They've looked kind of janky. Yeah. And I think that's going to be a factor in this one. I'd still back Leinster. And look, if Leinster won those teams, just bet on them every week and you're going to win more than you'll lose. But I think Benetton need a response. Everyone was tipping them for top 8, and then they've come out and they've played 2 duds in the first 2 rounds. They need a response. Yeah. But kind of so do Leinster, because they've got 70,000 people going to Croke Park the following week to play Munster. And if you lose this one, both teams' vibes are in the toilet, and I don't think they really want that.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I think it's an indication of how competitive this league is this season, where you're talking about Leinster and Benetton, and could go either way, And when you run down the fixtures for all of this week, every single game is like, well, it should go this way, but it could quite easily go the other way. And when you've got Zebra turning over Munster and then going up against the Stormers with confidence, and you're going like, that's just insane. That wouldn't happen last season, 2 seasons ago. That it just doesn't happen. It's a toss of a coin on every game, and I think I think people have caught up with Leinster. As a whole, everyone's kind of come up a little, and Leinster have kind of plattered. They haven't really.
They're treading water at best. I think they might have regressed slightly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they're treading water at the top. It's the problem.
I'm staying out of this conversation, but I agree.
Caelan's going like, I can't hear anything.
I can't this week of all weeks because it's just not worth it.
But do you know what I mean? They're treading water at the top, but everyone else is kind of coming up to them, and I think that's a good thing, because when you look at then what happens in Europe, we all get to compete at that higher level, and that is, kind of the point of this league. So so Ben is predicting Benetton by 3. I'm loving that. So, mate, if you've got to shoot off, you shoot off. But yeah, fantastic. It's been good. But
Yeah,
if you want to, if you want to hang around, you're welcome to. But if you want to shoot off, then you shoot.
I will. I'll catch up with you guys next week.
All right, mate. All the best.
Take it easy.
Cheers.
Cheers,
Ben.
Bye.
Cheers, Ben.
Bye.
Right. So now we get to slag Ben off.
I was just about to go there.
It's fine. It's fine. He won't listen to this part. If he's like any good podcaster, he'll only listen to bits he's on. But if he is listening, hi Ben.
Yeah, hiya Ben. So if you are listening and enjoying and watching and enjoying what you're seeing, please do rate and review, and more importantly, subscribe to us on YouTube. It makes a massive difference. Just to give you guys an idea, our YouTube channel since the start of this season has gone absolutely crazy, and people are loving what we're doing, and all of the comments are really good. Even the one about lighting up your face like a tree, Caelan, he's taken the response in good humor. So yeah,
I'm struggling. I'm really struggling here.
I am
it's
loving
great to see
this
the numbers shooting up, in fairness, and I think it's not just this podcast. I think it's testament to the other rap podcasts. I know Irish fans are very reluctant to tune into anything that isn't Irish, so I will push them in the direction of the rap pod more than maybe Cardiff Central or Scarlet's pod or whatever. There's a lot of good content on this page. I think people should really check it out. And WXV is on, so there's the Welsh women's pod as well.
Yeah, I said the women's pod launched last week as well. So we're now reviewing the women's game. And the first thing the women said to me after they recorded their pod was, "That was really good. Can we do an American rugby podcast?" And I'm like, "Oh, for crying out loud." So you may well see another member of the family join in when is it? Oh, crikey, just after Christmas. Right. Anyway, let's crack on with some more games for this week. So, Alan, you got Lions at home again against Edinburgh as your game of the week. Talk us through that one, mate.
So this is our first interpod game. The first time we get to play each other in a game. Me against Ben, and he's decided to leave. So take from that what you will. But basically, I think the Lions are in a really good place. I think Edinburgh are going to struggle. So I'm feeling really optimistic that the Lions are going to take this one. I think they're itching to go. I think they would love another bonus point win in Johannesburg. And we know that Edinburgh have got tough fixtures coming up and they've been struggling a little bit. But to go from Pretoria to Johannesburg is really difficult with the pack the Lions have. So I'm going to give it to the Lions by about 15 points.
So talk us through the geography of that then, because for us in South Wales, we're all within an hour and a half of each other. It's not massively distant. What kind of geography are we talking about for Edinburgh this week?
It's not actually a long distance. I mean, both of the places are growing quite significantly, so eventually they're going to meet up. But I would probably say it's between an hour and a half worth of travel for them, but they're going to go up in altitude. Now, unlike you guys, I don't have all the research in front of me, but I don't have the exact numbers, but it's a bit higher in Johannesburg. I think the issue is it's probably going to be a little bit less. The area that the actual stadiums and that are in are a little bit less friendly in Johannesburg. I think it's a bit more of a less welcoming atmosphere, less welcoming area. And I think it's just a little bit higher than where it was, but it was very hot over the weekend. You saw the Ulster guys were struggling. So to come from Edinburgh, to fly over, then Pretoria, and then Johannesburg, the temperature and everything is very similar. But I just feel like Johannesburg is going to be raring to go. And as far as I'm aware, there's no rain or anything predicted for the game, which would probably do Edinburgh a huge favour. But I think it's basically going to just be really tough for them. The Lions have got a running game, a massive pack. They don't have a massive squad, but they really do like their free-flowing rugby. And I think Edinburgh are really going to struggle. So, like I said, I'm predicting 15-point win for the Lions.
And Edinburgh did get run a little bit ragged against the Bulls, even when they did try to control the pace of the game. So the chances of them being fit and feisty and ready to go, Lions are more used to it. Then you add in the altitude and all.
And
this
the thing
stuff.
to consider as well is when you're playing in a place like that, whether it be, you're going to, it's probably not going to be that busy. I mean, the Springboks have won this week, so the fans are going to be turning their eye to the URC now. When you've got a free-flowing team like the Lions with a massive pack who are willing to grind you down or play running rugby, the thing, you have to control the game. They'll be wanting to go from line out to scrum, from phase to phase play, controlling, potentially up and under kicking. They will want to try and slow the game down. And I think that's really, really difficult to do in Johannesburg. But that's the only way I can see Edinburgh winning that game. And I think it's going to be one of the toughest. This early in the season, when the Lions haven't got any injuries, I think it's going to be really tough for them to do.
Okay. So what was your prediction again?
The Lions to win by 15 points.
Lions by 15. Interesting. See, that's considering the closeness of the games that we've got up so far. 15 is like a massive hammering. So yeah, cool. Okay. So next off the rank then is Munster and Ospreys. So to be fair to you, Caelan, you didn't really have a choice this week because that's the only
I had a choice
Irish
between Munster Ospreys and Munster Ospreys by our own rules. But no, I think in fairness, like this game is a big one. It's Saturday night. I think if Munster win last weekend, we're not giving it the same level of billing. But now Munster need a result. They're going to be bringing back in, most namely, Ty Byrne, one of the best second rows in world rugby. Peter O'Mahony needs no introduction. Jack Crowley needs no introduction. They're hoping to have Alex Nagelfeld back in there. They're hoping to have Dave Kilcoyne back in there. And probably hoping to have Billy Burns back in as well. But the Ospreys, they've just gone and beaten the Stormers in Bridgend. It was more convincing than any of us predicted. We all called an Ospreys win last week, but it was way more convincing than any of us foresaw seeing. I think it's win or bust for Munster. It's not win or bust for the Ospreys, but the Ospreys are not the type of team you want to be playing when you're on a low ebb. From a Munster perspective, if I was to be positive, I think it's easier to bring back in your Burns, your Crowleys, your O'Mahonys, and look at the fact that, well, it's our defence and our set piece that needs tidying up. We need to play within ourselves a small bit more and look to just grind out a result and get that result, get that confidence back in, than to say, oh God, we can't stick a pass, we can't score tries, we can't get up the field. That's much harder to introduce in a week. I don't want to talk too much about Munster. If anyone wants to check out the Red Army podcast this week, they can. Feel free. Like, the more listeners, the merrier. It would be great to have you on. But Munster need a reaction. If Munster are going into the HBC tomorrow morning or this morning as people listen, and they're not ready to punch the person beside them, they're in the wrong headspace. You need to be pissed off. You've just lost in Italy against Zebre for the first time ever. Munster lost to Ironi way back when. For people who actually remember, a lot of South African fans in particular wouldn't. And they've now lost to Zebra. But this is the team who came first last year. And you've got Croke Park and Leinster in a week's time. Then you're off to South Africa to play the Stormers and the Sharks, who'll be starting to get their internationals back. Then you're on international break. Need to win this one. It's in Cork. Munster's record in Cork is pretty good. I think they've only one loss there since pre-COVID, if not no losses there since pre-COVID. They have a really good record in Musgrave Park, but need to win. I'm going to go with Munster. They're my prediction for the game of the week, and might just touch on Super Brew before we close because people will be... I did plug it last week and I didn't have it with me, but I think Munster have to win. I think the Ospreys are a tricky team, especially when Munster set piece. Scrum has been all right. It's the line-out that's been poor, and now you run up against the likes of Adam Beard, who is a line-out specialist, and I don't want to give the lads on the Ospreys Irie podcast any more reason to talk about Adam Beard, but there you go. I think he's a great second row player.
I do think it's easier to come up after a loss like they had. It was more of a shock loss as opposed to like if they had a run of two, like Edinburgh will be starting to be at a low ebb. There'll be two games which haven't gone their way. I mean, I think Munster are in a really good place. I think they're going to...
It depends how you look at it. I think
they're going to come back. I think they're going to be raring to go. I don't think they can wait to get onto the field against Ospreys. If they lose that game, then you start talking about, okay, now it's going to get tough. But I can't... I think Munster are going to win the game. I think they'll be raring to go, and I think it's going to be really tough for Ospreys to win that.
And I think It depends on which way you look at it. You could see it as, well, the Zebre loss could be treated in isolation, as you said, and I think that's a very fair point. The other side of it is, if they do lose this one, it's going to feel like more than a 2-game slide.
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
going to
I
feel like
agree.
you lost 3 or 4 in a row. I think that's the big thing. And then again, you go to Croke Park to play Leinster.
And then
That's
to
gonna
South
be so
Africa,
tough. And then
having off the
South
back
Africa-
of 2 losses. That's.
Can I just say, Munster have the best record in the URC of teams in South Africa. They've yet to lose a regular season URC game. Just pointing that out. Actually, they have. Sorry, it's the fact that they've gone. The last 2 seasons, they've gone unbeaten.
They're a good team. Munster are a very
You know what I
good
mean?
team.
But yeah, they're there, and you don't become a bad team overnight. You know, as much as, look, I had man flu last week, and I was a cranky fecker last week, and I took it out in Glasgow, and I stand by it. But
you stand by, man. Yeah, we all do that.
Yeah, that thing. But you don't become a bad team overnight, and they have to show that. I think they have to get a bounce back. I would love to see them put 40 points on the Ospreys, but no one does. You know, they're a gnarly, tough team to play against. I love the Ospreys. I said it when we talked about Toby Booth departing. They're a tough team to play against. I'll go at Munster by score, and I think the ideal scenario is either Munster cut loose and they just show we're back. You know, like this is us. We are here. Or the Ospreys play really well. Munster have to go to the well, and they prove to themselves that they are not a team who's going to roll over again this season. And I think that's the ideal scenario. Lose, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough couple of weeks then. But yeah, fun time to be a Munster fan.
Who are the 2 teams? Who are the 2 teams they're playing in South Africa? Is it the Sharks and the Stormers?
Sharks and Stormers, yeah.
So I mean, if they win this game now, and even if they lose to Leinster, those are the 2 teams you want to travel to.
Yeah,
those are the 2 that you'd rather travel to. The 2, teams at sea level. And the Sharks have been on a bit of a lull for about 1.5 years now, haven't they? So
and
they're
the
not
Stormers
exactly.
without Sasha, they don't look as good. Certainly didn't look as good at the weekend. They'll be only just coming. Well, they'll be on their second week down there by the time it comes around, I think. So I think it's a strange one in some regards, how it's going to go. But you don't want to back up that loss against them with another loss. And as I was trying to say there, like, the only thing worse than being a Munster fan today is being the Munster fan who also supports Man United today. The only thing worse. But
to Tottenham, of all teams.
On to Cardiff, I think, next.
Yeah, I mean, from an Ospreys point of view, I know tails are up and all of that kind of thing, but they're not playing exciting rugby. Toby Booth will keep telling you that they're playing exciting rugby because he understands the psychology and how the mentality of it works. But it's not exciting rugby, but it's winning rugby, and I think that's fine. It's, let's say, go back to the Cardiff Scarlets game. That was entertaining rugby for the first 20-25 minutes. Ospreys don't play entertaining rugby, but they win. And they will grind you down. And if the weather conditions are poor and there's a lot of knock-ons and there's a lot of kicks to touch, Munster are in for a hell of a time, because you don't get anything out of the Ospreys, either in attack or defence, in the tight. The way to beat the Ospreys is to play an open game with kicks into space, to running in the outside channels, all of that kind of stuff, doing stuff they're not expecting. When you play a set-piece game, they're perfectly comfortable. They can compete with the best in Europe there. What they can't do is pass a ball more than twice in a movement. That's just abhorrent sort of stuff. They get confused, they knock the ball on, people get scared, they hide, and all sorts of stuff happens. But if you play into their hands, they will absolutely destroy you. So
they're a team you try and smother. Munster did it in the quarterfinal last year. They just sucked all the life out of them, smothered the Jesus out of them. But it's going to be tough. And there's a bit of a mini rivalry between Munster and Ospreys that's still there. It's not as fierce as it was, but it's still kind of there. The Ospreys will love nothing more than to come to Cork and to get a rare win in Musgrave Park, or Virgin Media Park, I should say. But this one does scare me, I won't lie.
Absolutely. So my final game of the week then is Cardiff and Glasgow, which, for obvious reasons, Cardiff are second in the table, I think now. Glasgow coming off a decent win, both sides playing good rugby. This is just what you need. Every week now, it's difficult to choose game of the week because you're like, actually, there's going to be 2 or 3. There's going to be 8 games which are going to be cracking games.
I'd have chosen the other Friday night game in Wales, if I'm being entirely honest, but that's, Irish bias again.
I didn't want to seem like I was, going me. And the less I talk about the Scarlets at the minute, the better, probably. But, Cardiff, this is on Cardiff's pitch. They'll be at home. They're starting to build something at home. They spoke before the season about making it into a fortress and all of that, which everyone does. Everyone wants to, win your home games, pick up a couple away, and all that kind of stuff. But the Cardiff fans are buying into that now. They in theory, they've got as many supporters inside half an hour as the Scarlets have got inside an hour and a half. You can. So there's no reason for Cardiff not to fill that stadium every week, and they pretty much do now. And it's an intimidating place to go. And I don't think Glasgow had a bit of an iffy one the first week. Yes, Benetton imploded in week 2. The jury is still out on Glasgow as to are they genuinely a top class side, or are they hot and cold? Cardiff have hit the groove. It's a very, very steady side. You can pretty much select a 15 now, and it'll be pretty close to where it is on Friday. And they're playing well for each other. So, Glasgow are going to come down tails up. Cardiff are there tails up. I think it's going to be a fantastic game of rugby, regardless of what the weather is. Genuinely, it's on a 40 pitch, so it's going to be a good game of rugby, and it's really difficult to call. Really, really difficult to call. Now, from my point of view, I hope Cardiff get a little bit of a tonking, but not too much, because they play the Scarlets the week after. So I don't want them angry after playing Glasgow, but then I also don't want them with their tails up. So it's a difficult one from that point of view. But looking at it as a neutral, I can see Cardiff sneaking this by 1 point. I think it's going to be a really, really close game. It'll come down to kicks. It might come down to one iffy bounce. It might come down to, one drop pass or something like that. But it's going to be really, really close. But my prediction is Cardiff by 1 on Friday night with that. So, yay!
Before we go, because that's all the games for this week.
I'm going to quickly rattle through all the others.
We'll go through all the others, and then we'll go through who won the Super Bowl this week. Yeah.
See, he's smiling now. He's like a little kid that's just found some chewing gum behind the sofa.
Moving swiftly along.
Okay, so Scarlets Connacht, both sides need a win. We're in that position. We're 3 weeks in, and I said this last week with Scarlets. We've had seasons before where we started with a draw and we played okay, and then it starts going downhill. Scarlets have to win. I don't care what it's like. We try to play an exciting brand of rugby. I don't care if it's 3-0 with a dodgy decision on 82 minutes and it's a slotted kick. I don't care. We have to win and have to start building momentum. And for Connacht, that game, it really tells them how their season is going. That when you go away to Scarlets, it isn't an easy game to win. So it'll be a good indication for Connacht as to whether or not they are the real deal for the rest of this season or not.
I'd go Connacht in that one. Connacht's record in Connecticut is historically not the best, but I'd go Connacht.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say 4 Irish wins, but I won't because Ulster are in the Pretoria. But yeah, Connacht in this one.
Well, up yours to the pair of you. I'm going Scarlets on that. And I ain't going to say Ben's going to go Scarlets as well, just to balance it off with that.
We need tribalism on this podcast. We don't
Absolutely.
have enough.
We'll have none of this reason debate and let's look at the facts. This is just about I want us to win. Okay, Bulls will host Ulster on the weekend. Expectations on that then,
Bulls.
you two, Alan?
I think the Bulls will be a bit more polished, a bit more ready to go, a bit more battle hardened. And I think Ulster are going to be pretty tired again. So I think Bulls are going to go big pack. Yeah, Bulls. Yeah.
It did worry me how knackered Ulster looked. Genuinely, last week they did just look. I felt sorry for them. They had to come back out for the second half, and I think it got to the end of that first half, and there were so many players just like, right, that's it, I'm done for the day. So,
they were out a lot of players. I know I touched on it last week, but like Marty Moore has just retired after the first game of the season. Didn't play in it. It's not related to that, but he's just retired. They were without Scott Wilson, Harry Sheridan, Cormac Fitzgerald, Drew Postlewaite, John Cooney missed the first game. They were without their backup out halves. They were without a lot of players. But I can't see them getting the job done here. They have a good record in South Africa, mind you. They've gotten close and they've gotten a few wins, but I can't see them doing this one.
Okay, so we'll tell Ben that he's going for Bulls as well. So that's all four of us going Bulls. Excellent. Dragons host the Sharks at home, Rodney Parade.
Dragons.
I'm going to go Sharks on that one.
Okay.
Give me Dragons. Go back it up, boys.
The Sharks are going to take that one.
I think the same. I think the Sharks, the second game travelling traditionally with South African sides, it's the second and the third week where they tend to play the decent rugby. But I just think there is a change of attitude in the Dragons this year. There is defence is starting to come, and then eventually that attack will come. So I'm going to go Dragons, and Ben is going to go Sharks, just to even it out. So it's 2 weeks there as well. Ben's going to love this when he listens.
After next week, Ben's not going to be backing any team I go for.
Right, so then the last game to look at then is Zebra Stormers, which normally this would just not be a game of interest at all. But for me, this is probably the game of the round at the minute. Everyone is looking to see what's happening with Zebra.
I'm going Zebra.
Yeah, I'm going Stormers.
Why not? Ride the crest of this wave for as long as we can.
Yeah, I think the Stormers will get. They have a good game in them, and I think they'll be a lot more direct. I think the Stormers will take. It'll be close though, and Zebra can definitely win it. But I'm just going to go with my heart on that one. Stormers.
So I'm going to go Zebra as well. Like I said, I did the pre-season stuff. They've got a really good, strong, solid squad. Young players, ambitious players. The coaching setup is bang on. And Stormers were rattled. Stormers got rattled by the Ospreys. It is a bit of a trek by the time you pack up kit, then you get yourself over to there, and then it's a day to adjust and all that kind of stuff. Everything plays into Zebra's hands, and for the good of the league, I really hope Zebra have a good one. I do think it'll be close, but I think Zebra are gonna edge this one, and all of a sudden people are gonna start looking up and going, well, who's the whipping boys? There aren't anyone. Oh, right, that's how we play the game. However, to balance things up, Ben is also going Stormers as well, so we've got 2 weeks on both sides there. So we're all good. There's no arguments. We're two apiece.
There's going to be plenty of arguments. Don't worry about that, Lee. There will be arguments.
Next week, me and Kenan's going to get himself another Chinese takeaway. I'm going to get a pizza ordered, and we're just going to go, right, okay, Lions, Edinburgh, off you two go, and then we'll be back in an hour when you're done.
It's not a bad plan. I'm just kind of offended that you think I eat takeaways every weekend. That's the only thing.
Another takeaway.
Before we go, Super Group.
Yes.
None of us got the full allotment this week, which is understandable because there was one big shock. I got 7, which takes me up to 13 points. Lee, you're on 12.5 points. This is going to be a tete-a-tete. Ben is on 10. Now, the only thing is, and this is where it gets really interesting, in the games of the week, and I'm also tracking this, and I'll kind of keep us up to date on these every week. I've gone 2 from 2. I've gone with Munster and Connacht, and I'm going Munster this week. Hopefully, can make it 3 from 3. Ben has gone 2 from 2 with Leinster and Bulls. Twice he's gone against Edinburgh winning a game, and twice he's gotten it right, which is bittersweet. Ben, it's okay. Alan, you're 1 from 2. Of course, Glasgow lost in the first round, but the Lions backed it up in round 2. And Lee is still waiting for his first win in the games of the week. Now, technically speaking, he never picked Zebre to beat Cardiff. But in the group chat, he did kind of say, go on, give me Zebre, and sure, we'll see what happens. Obviously, they didn't win. Scarlett then lost to Cardiff, and now he's tipping Cardiff. So, moral of the story here is, Lee is now a Cardiff fan. Alan's just going to pick all the South Africans, and
of course I'm gonna. That's what I'm here for.
And I'm going to pick the
It's a
Irish
passion
team,
project
and Ben's
for
going
me.
to go against Edinburgh. So
yeah. Meanwhile, the Italian side are sitting there going like, "Well, what did we do? Why does nobody like us? What's wrong?" Oh, fantastic. Gents, it has been a pleasure as always. Again, the URC is proving itself to be best league in the world by far at the minute. And it's a pleasure spending an hour of my time every week with you. I thank you very much for your time. We shall do this all again next week. I expect full-out war between Alan and Ben on this group chat before then. In the meantime, gents, have a good time. Enjoy yourself. All the best.
thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
That was the United Rugby Rewind. Please rate, review and share us on socials if you can, and join us next week for more of the same. And until then, enjoy your rugby.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.